Greetings from Michigan. I'm the Reverend Canon Ron Spann. I'm a retired Episcopal priest here in the east side of Detroit. And I was a member of the 1961 Youth for Understanding Michigan Youth Chorale. It turned out that I would be the only youngster of color in the choir, and I would be representing not only the United States, but also the Black people of the United States. The chorale was very well received in Latin America. We, of course, were youngsters who by and large did not know the language of our hosts. We sang some of our repertoire. It was a classical repertoire, a contemporary music repertoire, as well as folk music, spirituals, and other folk elements from American culture. But these were received, and the ones that we sang in Spanish were especially well received, even though it was mostly Spanish. We didn't have anything in Portuguese for the Brazilian audiences. But that gesture to meet them in their own cultural frame of reference made a big impact. Our host families were always cordial. I found myself very well received. That was disarming and very important for me because in my own culture back home, I couldn't always feel secure about how I might be received as a youngster, a colored child, as we would have said at that time, outside my home context. All of us enjoyed a wonderful reception. The backdrop of our time there and what was going on in America, the civil rights movement indeed was underway. I was just a high school student, had not yet become part of any activism, even though there was a lot of student activism happening in the campus of the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. When the sit-in movement started, students started sit-ins at the Kresge counters in Ann Arbor in sympathy with those students who were trying to sit at Kresge counters in the Jim Crow South. But that was not yet something that I became at all involved in, and I would not be part of that kind of student activism in my remaining years. But I was ardently reading things like the writings of James Baldwin and other social commentators. I was a student doing a volunteer service quarter outside Philadelphia in the spring of 1963 when the Birmingham, Alabama campaign began and the fire hoses and the police dogs were turned on the crowds of demonstrators. And I was watching this on the screens of suburban Philadelphia, which 1 year later itself, the town of Chester, Pennsylvania, would go up in flames because of civil rights conflicts and some of the urban unrest that had begun to unfold in the 60s. For me, it determined my academic career. I became a Spanish and linguistics major directly as a consequence of being in that tour and my desire to communicate with the friends I had made in Latin America. It, of course, opened up new doors to me. I would eventually study in Madrid, Spain as a university student for 2 academic terms, and I would return to Mexico as a senior to write my undergraduate dissertation and did all my research there in provincial Mexico in Guanajuato. I believe that my identity formation as it was going on in those adolescent years received an immense gift from the opportunity created by Youth for Understanding. These cultural encounters, receiving youngsters into an American setting, sending American youngsters abroad, is such an important time, especially at this time in our history. I wish you the very best, and what you are giving to young people and what you are giving to the world sure deserves to be celebrated. Thank you, and God bless.